Welcome to the Branding Room Only podcast, where we share career stories, strategies, and lessons learned on how industry leaders and influencers have built their personal brands. Now, let's get started with the show. Hi, everybody. It's Paula Edgar, and welcome to the Branding Room, where I speak to influencers and professionals about how they built their personal brand. And today, my guest is my friend, Stefanie Marrone. Let me tell you about her. She is a legal marketing professional with over 20 years of experience working with leading law firms and legal service providers. As an in-house marketer, she has held senior roles at firms including Sullivan and Cromwell, Paul Weiss, and Proskauer, where she developed business development, branding, and social media strategies. As a consultant, she helps law firms, professional service firms, and legal industry companies build their brands and businesses through tailored marketing and revenue-generating strategies. She's also a phenom on LinkedIn, and as I mentioned, she's my friend. Stefanie, welcome back to the Branding Room.
I am so happy to be here. Hi, Paula. It's been a year.
I know.
It's been a full year. There's so much to catch up on, and your podcast is doing great. It's one of my favorites, and so I'm so proud of you, and congratulations for doing a personal branding podcast that is really helping to build your personal brand. So, I mean, that's amazing, right?
Thank you. Well, speaking of that, tell me what personal branding means to you. How would you define it?
Okay, so personal branding is different for people, right? Like everybody has a impression of us when they meet us, when they see a picture of us, when they look us up online. And to me, in this digital first world, what personal branding is a way to control that, to control the message, to make sure that it's working for you. It's a form of reputation management, and it's something that evolves just like you evolve over the years. As you develop in your career or decide you want to do different things, you can make a conscious effort to decide that you want to be known for something that maybe you weren't known for before. And that's the beauty of personal branding, particularly, like I said, in this digital age. So it's everything about us. It's everything that people see about us. It's what we put out in the world. And it's a way for us to control that narrative and using different tools. And I'm sure we'll talk about this, but one size doesn't fit all, Paula. There are a lot of people who are very into social media like you and me. And then there are a lot of people who it's not their cup of tea, but there are other things you can do to build your brand. And you can be just as successful as somebody who, for example, adopted LinkedIn or decided to start a podcast. There is something for everyone.
Love that. Love that. So speaking of brands and evolution of brands, I wonder, how would you describe yourself in 3 words or short phrases?
Oh my God. Okay. Okay. So this is all part of my brand.
Mm-hmm.
A little quirky,
very
passionate and enthusiastic. And I think this is so hard. 3 words, only 3 words? Or can I? Okay. So passionate, enthusiastic, and I would say early adopter. So I won't expand because you only asked me to do 3 words, but that's sort of why I am where I am, because I took a chance on LinkedIn back in the day.
I love it.
By the way, can I say that in the legal field in which you and I are, it is not easy to build your personal brand and be yourself. And I'd love to talk a little bit about that today, just like how you can have individuality and be yourself and stand out, but still be in this, sort of still buttoned up world and find your way, find your lane and stand out.
Absolutely. I love talking about authenticity and how we bring it to all the spaces that we're in. So absolutely. Tell me this. Do you have a favorite quote or mantra?
So yes, a few. They change, but this is maybe there's 2. The New York State Lotto slogan, you've got to be in it to win it. And let me tell you why I like this. No, I am not advocating that all of you go out and buy a lottery ticket or go to Mohegan Sun or Vegas and gamble. No. But if you want to, that's fine. Just be responsible. What I am saying is that you have to be in it to win it means that you can't sit back at home and have all these great ideas in your head about articles you would write, things you would like to be on a podcast for, a webinar you would like to do, a post you would like to do on LinkedIn, an organization that you would like to be more involved in, an email that you would like to send to potential clients to get business. You can't have all those ideas and don't execute on them and then watch other people do it, people who are just as good as you, if not maybe not even as good as you. Watching your peers and watching your competitors do those things, and you know you're really good at what you do and you have a lot to offer, to me is doing yourself a huge disservice, right? So you've got to be in it to win it, meaning you've got to try. And if you don't try, you will never know. We can sit, Paula, and wait for opportunities to come to our inbox, and they may. But if we took control and actually put ourselves out there and realize that we have like ownership over this, to create that narrative, to go after the things we want, and to also have a thick skin, because building a personal brand is also resilience. So can I add that to my list of things that words I would use to describe myself? Resilience, because I hear no quite often, and I don't let that get me down. I instead go to what I would say is my second quote, which is that there's no such thing as rejection. I think of rejection as redirection. So when something doesn't work out and I get discouraged, I really try to remind myself, Paula, that I am bigger than this, that it wasn't the right door right now, that there will be another opportunity, that it's okay, because I feel better about myself knowing that I put myself out there versus not. So I try not to take that rejection personally, and I try to just then focus on some of my wins and the things I know that I'm good at. So I would say you've got to put yourself out there, but you have to also be resilient and be okay with the fact that you're not going to hear yes. But you'll never know if you don't actually try those things.
I love that. I love both of those things. And I asked you the question again, because when you were on the podcast before, I thought maybe her quote has changed. Maybe I love it. The lotto, it's always, it's like, if you're not there, then you can't win or lose. You're not in the game. So I love it. Okay, what about a hype song? And I'm guessing it has to be Dave Matthews Band.
Okay, so I've spent the last 5 nights out of the last 6 nights, which I've told you ad nauseum about how exhausted I am, just for the fact that, I'm in my late 40s and I'm really tired now and I can't go out like I used to. And my bedtime has gotten earlier. So there is a great, okay, so hype song, like when I'm working out, and I said the same thing last year, it's going to be Eminem, Lose Yourself. But in anything Beyonce, especially, like I'm really into the Cowboy Carter era right now. I think that's amazing. There's so many Beyonce songs that get me pumped up. And I would say, like, when you get pumped up to work out, it's sort of the same thing when you're pumping yourself up to show up online or show up in general. You've got to have this like, feeling of like, yeah, I can go get it. So like, those songs like really do make a difference. But there is a Dave Matthews song that's, there's a lyric in one of his songs, and it says, "Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may die." Okay, so what is that? It's not somber. It's just, again, go after what you want, because you just don't know. Tomorrow's not promised. We can sit and wait for things to happen to us, and then we never do it. I'll give you an example. My mom always wanted to go to Italy, Paula. Got cancer, got sick, wasn't able to do it, never wound up going, never wound up seeing Italy, right? That's a personal example. But what if you never started that side gig, started that business, started that podcast, showed up on LinkedIn? You'll never know. I mean, I'm very consistent in my branding here, because it goes back to this whole, like, you've got to be in it to win it, and you just need to put yourself out there. So I would say all of these things really work together and really get at the fact that, like, again, like if you don't do it, you'll never know, and somebody else will do it. So why not let it be you?
I love that. And I always say that there's a constant reminder that tomorrow is not promised. And there's also the constant promise that tomorrow can be the best thing ever, right? Like that there's an energy, and I love this energy around the beginning of the year, which is like, okay, right? There's this momentum of, that's gone. Here I have this whole 365 days plus, right, that I can do something new in. And no matter where you are in the year, there's always that case, that always that momentum of what's next.
There's always that thing. And I would say to that also, like, sometimes it's hard to do something we haven't done before, right? Like it requires us to step outside of our comfort zone. So maybe
Absolutely.
being a guest on a podcast, you're nervous about being, seen and heard and all those things. You can't stand your voice when you leave a voicemail, which I feel very strongly about. Showing up on video, it's not easy. You want to be a panelist. You were asked to speak on a panel
Yeah.
and you were nervous about doing it. But,
Mhm.
I would again say, like, sometimes like these stretch moments are ones that really help us grow. We
Mhm.
say, I don't know that I could do it. And then we do it. And then we say, wow, you know what? I can do it. And that's a hype thing up because you have to have your own cheerleader sitting on your shoulder instead of that naysayer voice.
Yeah.
You really need that because truly, I believe that we can each do whatever we really set our minds to if we believe in ourselves. And it may not be perfect, and that's okay. But every time we do these things, we get better at them.
I love that. I think that one of the reasons why I wanted to do the podcast is that I wanted folks to know that even when it may look shiny and bright and it seems like people have it all together, that they're hyping themselves. They have to figure themselves out. They have to give themselves stretch assignments. And, my therapist says growth begins where comfort ends, right? And that's when you show up and show out is when you've done something that maybe didn't feel great at first, but you did it. And there's a power in that success.
And
But
what I love also about your podcast is that it's different people's paths to building their brand and it's not linear, it's
right,
not similar, but
right.
it works for them. Like, and I learn from these stories, which is really helpful. And again, like if you need motivation of listening to a podcast like this and reading articles and surrounding yourself with people who've done it
Yeah.
can be very motivating and also make it less daunting to do
Yeah.
it as well.
I agree. So tell me, how did you become the Stefanie that has this on their shoulder cheerleader that is pumping herself up, understanding there may not be wins, that there may be challenges? Where did you grow up? How did you grow up and how did that shape your brand?
So, by the way, I will say that it looks like I'm confident on social media. It looks like I'm confident posting on my blog. It looks like when I speak at a conference, I'm confident, but I'm not. And like one of the things I struggle with a lot is the fact that I want people to like me and that I worry what they're thinking about me. But one of the hardest lessons, Paula, I learned is that not everybody will like me. The sound of my voice will make some people cringe, and some people will look at me up and down and be like, "Oh, she's just not my kind of person." And then other people will be like, "Oh, wow, like I get her. She gets me. I love her. Like I gravitate toward her." And that's something I think everyone should really think about. Like you will not be liked by everybody. You will not even maybe be liked by a lot of people, but that's okay. You will find your tribe. You will find your people. All of this came for me kind of by accident. I mean, I would say like I always was the kid back in the day who got in trouble for like talking too much. Like I was a really good student, but I was always talkative, chatty, and always questioned things. I always raised my hand. I always was sort of like the outgoing, small. I was really. So this is going to sound a little maybe off topic, but I'm not tall, as you know. I'm like 5'2". I think that part of my big personality is because I've been small and I like in stature, but I've been wanting my voice to be heard. And so that was something I think early on that like when you're like number one or number two in the class lineup and you realize like, okay, like I'm little, like I want to stand out. I'm going to
Yeah.
use my voice to do that. The other thing I learned was that I wanted to help other people. That was something that's always been part of who I am. It's hard because some people will say, you show up online or you show up with your brand because you like attention. You want to be in the spotlight. And I say, okay, maybe, but there's a bigger part of this, which is like the idea of helping people. That's
Yeah.
always been who I am, whether it was volunteering when I was younger, in college, and then definitely permeated throughout my entire career. LinkedIn was sort of by accident that I found it, used it, was able to build my brand. Now, I'll say, I worked at very buttoned up white shoe firms where it was frowned upon to build your brand, to have a brand, to even be found, Paula, on LinkedIn, because this was back in the day where they thought that if you were on LinkedIn, somebody could poach you. So they wanted to hide you. And then employers realized that actually, okay, number one, it's really good for our employees to be on LinkedIn because they can be brand ambassadors for us. And number two, we don't have control over their social media. So we should help them cultivate that brand and be supportive of it. So that was sort of like, it was like, okay, touch and go for a while. By the way, a lot of my posts were terrible and I cringed back. It's sort of like when you're like, a singer, right? And you make your first audition tapes and you're like, whoa, like my posts were cringy. You ever go back to your Facebook posts when they come up?
I do. And I'm always like, what was I thinking?
Yeah, like, I mean, my Facebook post from 2008 and 2009, let me tell you, sometimes they come up and I'm like, delete, right? But I'll say, like, I found my voice online, and then I realized I had something of value. So this all begins and ends with you, because even when the audience isn't there, even when the likes aren't there, if you truly believe that you are providing value, being a human, being helpful. And by the way, that's where my brand exploded when I started sharing more personal things. And again, this wasn't pulling out all the skeletons in the closet, because if I was going to do that, it would take me a really long time and there would be a lot of skeletons in there. It was sort of like being a human, being someone that was relatable. I was able to really stand out from the sea of boring stuff, not only online, Paula, but like boring stuff on the internet, in emails, very me-centric content, which most people think that personal branding is about talking about how great they are. And I say, absolutely not. Another quote I would say is show versus tell. You don't need to tell people how great you are when you're really great. You need to help people and then be a human. And then by extension, they realize that you're really great at what you do. So this is my very long-winded way of saying it's always been in me to help people. I love to communicate like this, especially like during the pandemic when you and I met, where it was so hard to find ways to connect with people. So LinkedIn was my lifeline to the universe. And that was sort of, again, like another way, like I really started using video for the very first time. And I should show you, I will not share with your audience, but I should show you my earliest video. My very first video was day 4 of the lockdown, Paula, in March of, what was it, 2020, right? Or like 4 years ago. Made my first video. It was cringy. I posted it, did well. And then it kept getting better as I kept getting more confident, better at it. And I found my voice, I found my lane. You don't hear me talking about iguanas, right? Or finance, personal finance. I know what I know, and I'm going to stick to that. And that would be another tip I would tell everyone listening. Stick to what you know, the stuff you're passionate about, because when you like what you're talking about and you know your stuff, you're going to do it better than you could otherwise.
I agree with that 100%. Even as you're still learning, the things that you have an innate connection to, that you're interested in, that you want to grow in, those are the things that you should focus on, because there's just this, I use the word magic all the time when I talk about personal brand. It infuses everything you do and kind of shows up even when you may not think it does, right? Like it permeates through all the things.
Yeah. Can we talk about you for a minute? I would like to say, okay, so for those who don't know, we met right before the pandemic at a New York City Bar Association conference where we both were speakers. And I think I spoke first and then I stayed and I watched you speak. And I will say that power, that passion, that electricity was so apparent from you on a stage. And I was blown away by not only what you were saying, but how you said it. And so you had this impact, I think, that I was just like, wow, it's like going to a concert and like not ever seeing a band before that you didn't know. And you're like, whoa. And that's, by the way, how I got into Dave Matthews back in 1999. And so I would say you had the same effect on me as Dave Matthews. I was going to work that in. It's just like, and you that you love it. Just like I love showing up online. You get that same, I feel the same way when I'm speaking in person, but don't you personally feel that way when you're on a stage?
I do. And I think that's why I say to meet you who at the city bar, is because there's not a lot of folks who live in their authentic space. Like I think that sometimes you can feel when people are putting on airs to be in the space that they're in. And one thing I love about the New York City bar, shout out because I'm on the board there, is that the entire time that from when I was a law student all the way through now, I felt like it was home. Weirdly so, because again, it shouldn't have felt like that, but it's felt like that. And so there's a comfort level, but there's also the power of connection and what it does as an institution for people. So seeing somebody else there doing the same thing for the same people for me was like, oh, good, there's somebody else I can connect with, which I don't often see, who's excited and who wants to help. And I think that that's another place where we find the connection. It's like, yes, I could talk all day about here's all the fine things that I did, et cetera, but I'm doing it to talk about, hey, you should also do it. And also here's what I learned when I did this thing, or, maybe you should do this thing next. And if it helps somebody, then
it's even icing on the cake. So
exactly.
Two things I want to say from this. Number one, Paula and I are both, first of all, we're both extroverted extroverts, right?
Yep.
We have big personalities.
Yes.
We get along great. And this is something I want to say, like, be a hype woman for another woman. There's space for all of us. Like, we overlap in some areas, but I never, ever felt like, like you were like someone that I wouldn't want to collaborate with. We collaborate all the time. You'll find collaborators everywhere, even competitors and all of those things. I would just say, like, we are so much stronger when we help each other, when we realize our strengths. We have partnered on webinars, in-person stuff, articles, this kind of stuff. So you never know. And then personal branding, two things. I stayed after, and then I made sure I was fangirling you, but I connected with you. We met, and then we connected on LinkedIn. We met up eventually. Like, I would say, like, you're going to events, you're building your brand, like you're shaking someone's hand, you're meeting them, go up to the speakers afterward. And then third, I'd like to say, with the New York City Bar, it's a great example, Paula, of somebody who, like, if you want to get involved in a leadership position in an organization like that, professional trade association organization, such a great way to build your brand. If you're not an online person, and last time I was on the podcast, we spoke a lot about LinkedIn. I want to make very clear that building your brand doesn't mean that you have to be on social. Absolutely not. You take a leadership role in an organization like a New York City Bar Association, like whatever it is in your area, right? You become then known as an expert. You're meeting people. You got to do a good job, though, because one of the worst things you can do is get involved in these organizations and then not respond to emails, not do the things that you were asked to do. You're putting yourself on the line here. But I would say it's a great way, especially if you're a little bit more of an introvert or you like more in-person stuff, to get involved with an organization like that. And you never know, volunteer to help out with the name tag table, volunteer to plan the programs. You're going to meet some amazing people by doing this, and they will open tons of doors for you.
There are the 3 V's that I like to talk about when it comes to this. It is volunteer for visibility, right? And that connects you to all kinds of opportunities. So where's my other V? It's volunteer. Volunteer. Oh my gosh, what's my other V? Of course.
Visibility.
Volunteer visibility, but there's another V that
Is it venison?
No, it's not.
Wait, come back to it. We can do it.
Wait, it's okay. I'll remember later. It's all good. Whatever it is, there's some V's there.
Brain fog. I got it right now.
It's all good. I was just talking about this last week, but anyway. So when it comes to that, this podcast is around the beginning of the year. What are some of the actionable steps? Give me 3 that you think that professionals can take in January to set a strong foundation for their personal brand.
Okay, I'm going to give you a bonus one, which is to go to your personal branding masterclass. Are you doing it again? Which I hope
I do. My annual intention and goal setting session every January. Yes, so that will.
Okay, so but listen, I wouldn't be a hype girl and wouldn't be like a true believer in what I'm saying if I didn't hype you up too. Okay. So in addition to doing that, I want you guys to think about a few things. Okay, so the start of a new year is a blank slate. Now, this does not mean that January 1 is when, you need to say, okay, I'm going to be somebody different, or I'm going to do something different. Remember that these are goals and things you can do all throughout the year. You can start and stop them, and life gets in the way 1,000,000%. That's why you see everybody and their mother at the gym January 3rd. And then by March 3rd, you're like, okay, there's one person I recognize. That's fine. Don't beat yourself up over it. What is so important is to have just a few things. So do not make a laundry list of things you want to do. It's not going to be write a book, get on Wikipedia, speak at 7 conferences, organize my own conference, put on 17 webinars. Did I say write a book? Write the second book, do a podcast, do 7 videos. No. Okay. What you should do is think about for what you want to be known and what are the communication channels that you're really good at when it comes to communicating that. So pick. There are several: video, online, in person, volunteerism. I would say, there's a few others where you could sort of figure out like things that make sense, even in your own personal life. Like, are you getting involved with your kids? Are you involved in some community organizations? Like, there's a lot of things you can be doing. Are you going to maybe at the very least make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date and really reflects who you are, what you do, and for whom you do it?
Yep.
Maybe you're going to write one article per quarter. And if you don't have a vehicle to publish that article, you're going to publish it on LinkedIn. Maybe you're going to read a blog like the Social Media Butterfly blog to learn a little bit more about how to do these things and break it up. Maybe you're going to take a course. You're going to do something for you. You do not have to spend countless hours doing this, particularly when you're busy at home and you're busy at work. But you do need to make sure that you are putting out what you want in the universe to be put out. And again, it's reputation management. So I also want everybody at the start of the year to Google themselves. I want you to look at your Google search results on the first and second page. I want you to make sure that all your social media channels really are cleaned up, really reflect who you are, all of those things. Go through your blogs, go through old posts. Are they cringy? Delete things, that sort of thing. And then I want you to think about picking 3 conferences, 3 conferences over the course of the year that you would like to attend and or speak at. And the thing I really want you to do is to get in touch with someone who you know who either spoke at that conference or is a conference organizer, and ask how you become a speaker. Sometimes they'll be like the online form. Okay, you know what? Submit. But sometimes those go into like what I call like the vortex of nowhere. So find someone. Maybe if you're a lawyer, it's a PLI program. Maybe it's an ABA program. Maybe it's a New York City bar program. Find someone you know, ask them how to get involved, how to speak, put forward. Again, you'll never know if you don't try. And then you can also do your own thing. You could also, when in doubt, when I don't get picked for conferences, which by the way, Paula, happens quite a bit. I put myself forward to speak at the industry conference in my industry. That sounds like something that didn't really make sense, but you get what I'm trying to say. It sounds like something Austin Powers would say. So I will sometimes do my own webinar then if I don't get selected. Again, in this creator economy, we have control, much more control than we ever had before.
That's something that I've been thinking about a lot. Is I don't often pitch out things for conferences, but when I have, and if I haven't gotten them, it's like, what happens to that content? It's something that I thought about. So of course you could leverage it in the article or pitch it to another conference or et cetera. And so that makes a lot of sense. And I remembered my other V, which you triggered for me, which is it's vision and volunteer for visibility.
I love that. Those are great. All of this makes such a difference. Remember, okay, so here's another tip. I would say repurposing is one of the most important things that we can all do. So when it comes to repurposing, we all have a groundswell of content. Content, by the way, from something you submitted, like a topic for a conference, something you were a panelist for, the slides for something you prepared internally, externally, an article you wrote 5 years ago, a LinkedIn post from 3 years ago. By the way, everyone at the beginning of the year should download their LinkedIn post archive, which you can do on your desktop in the privacy and settings section. Just download the entire archive. It comes in a zip folder. It takes about 24 to 48 hours. That gives you all of the posts that you've ever made. You go through that. You use AI tools, which I use a lot, like ChatGPT and a few others, and you can have it help you create additional content. There's no need, Paula, to reinvent the wheel every day. Nobody remembers what they ate for breakfast, let alone what you or I posted on social 2 months ago. So again, the other thing is with repurposing is it's reinforcing the messages. So it's, again, making us stronger at the things for which we want to be known.
I love that. And I remember when we first had a conversation on this, whatever, many years ago, I was like, are you sure? Because if I said this week, if I say it again next month, then, 4 people will see it again. And you were like, okay, if those 4 people see it again, it'll be consistent. And then the 18 people who didn't see it before will have now seen it. And the more that I see you doing it, others doing it, I'm like, oh, it's so true, because I don't feel like annoyed when I see it again. I'm like, oh, that's right. I need to remember that thing. Oh, that's right. That's right. So
change up something, change the image, change the text a little bit, do something a little different. But again, I think a lot of people do what I call one and done. I'll say organizations do this too.
Yeah.
They take the time to post and create great content, speak at a conference. Like if you're speaking on a topic, you should be speaking on that topic again. Don't think that just because you spoke on it before that another organization wouldn't be interested in hearing you do it. Maybe you change up the other panelists on it, but there's a lot. And also every time you speak, you have a PowerPoint for the most part, right? Or notes.
Yeah.
Why don't you turn that into an article, a LinkedIn post, actually several LinkedIn posts, maybe a video clip, maybe a podcast topic? Like some of this just requires planning. And I think a lot of us are like, okay, we did it. Great. Gold star, like let's move on to the next thing.
Finished.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a lot more that you can do. It's sort of like, I see like the fashion example, like you buy a new blazer or a new shirt. You're not going to wear it just once. You're going to remix it. You're going to wear it with jeans, with a skirt, like whatever it is. Like it would be a total waste of money if you just left it in your closet and did nothing with it again. And so I would say the same goes for personal branding. You're not just going to create something and never use it again. And a lot of people do that. And again, you're not going to remember that I wore this blazer the last time you saw me. And if you do, like maybe you need to think about your own blazers and other things. But yeah, so don't like, you take the time to do it, like use it again.
So, you said a lot of things that I think for folks who are listening would be like, okay, that's the Paula and Stefanie thing. That's very visible. But let's pull out some of the things that you just talked about that can be used internally. One of the things I love to tell people to do to build their brands internally is when they go to a conference, if they're even just attending, is to write a post-attendance memo to stakeholders and to say, I went to X conference, I saw X speakers. Here are 3 takeaways that I have from the conference, and I'd love to go next year, and hopefully then I'll be able to speak. Or thanks so much for investing in me and my professional development by sending me to go. These are the things I learned from it. That's another branding that is not out external, but it's internal and shows people.
I love that. Yeah. You just made me think of something that's really important. Okay, so let's talk about the power and importance of internal branding.
Yes,
so
please.
It is very important, particularly if you work in a big organization or a big law firm, to make sure that you're not just one of many in your class, or that you're not just getting credit for doing the work. A lot of us just sit at our desks all day churning out amazing work, and that's great. But guess what? You also need to be visible internally so that you can get opportunities, and that you can also find champions and people who will advocate for you. So you don't want to overly, toot your own horn, because you don't want to sound really self-promotional, but you do want to make sure that you're raising your hand for things, making sure that people know your contributions, while also making sure that they know the contributions of other people on the team. Because again, you never want to take that spotlight. And it's always great to be more of that, sort of person who's hyping up other people. Everything we're saying dovetails to this, it really all makes sense when you put it all together. But make sure they're internally, you're getting involved in things, and that you're thanking the right people, like you said, for sending you to a conference. What can you do with that material? Can you do an internal lunch and learn with your colleagues and you share the things that you learned? Can you share some of the videos, whatever maybe that some key takeaways? But there's a lot to be said for internal branding, especially if you are somebody who is early in their career, or somebody who is not necessarily someone who wants to be in that spotlight. You need to make sure that you're not just, chugging out work, sitting at your desk all day.
It's true. It's true.
And also in a hybrid environment, and for people who work from home, it's harder to build your brand internally when you're not actually, having a conversation, running to the next office to do that. So I would also say it's very important that if you can have FaceTime with your colleagues and, people who are in higher level positions in your organization, do it.
Ask for it.
Ask for it. Do it. Go to the event. They ask you to come in once a month. There's a holiday party. This is holiday party season.
Yeah.
This should be a time where you're thinking about being visible.
Absolutely. Another one of my clients talked about something that she did, which I thought was amazing. In addition to listening to my, example about doing a post-event recap and sending a memo, she also got the resources from the app and attached it to the message that she sent. And I was like, that is so smart, because again, then you're like making sure you have it downloaded and you keep them, and you're sharing with folks who didn't get to go some of the things, and who knows if they'll ever look at it, but you never know. She also then talked about using that as an example in her self evaluation.
Evaluation. Yeah.
Yeah, all of that is things that you can do internally. And then also think about how you show up at meetings. Right? I'm a big fan of thinking, who's going to be at this meeting? What is this meeting about? And what is my question or what's the value add that I have? Why do they want me at this meeting? And thinking ahead of time about something you've read, something you know, questions you have, so that you can show up and show your value add. Right? Branding is not just about what you put online and not just what you wear, but it's all of the above. And you can absolutely brand yourself as a thought leader and somebody who is a go-to in whatever topic by just showing up and showing up well. So I'm a
I
big
agree with that 100%. And I told you a situation recently where I was, okay, so I am not vanilla. I would say there's color to me. Like I am a big personality. I'm a little quirky. The people listening to the podcast can't see, but I've got a bunch of holiday decorations behind me. I am definitely somebody who is, I'd say I'm not for everybody, right? But that shouldn't detract or distract or take away from the substance I provide. And I worry sometimes with being a big personality and not be feeling like I'm just, fitting in with everybody else or being like everybody else, that can actually be to my detriment. And so that's something that I'm working on. How do people perceive me? Are they looking at the extraneous things about me, though, that don't have to do with with the substance I bring and with the subject matter knowledge I have? And where's my place? And how do I keep my individuality while wanting to also be professional and have that stature in that meeting? And what does that mean? My mentor said to me, I've got my personal persona and then I have my professional persona. And I think that a lot of people fall into that category. I have not been that great about separating the two. The Stefanie you get at work is the same Stefanie you get on the weekend. And other people are better. Like my friend said, she sort of has a mask and she sheds that mask. And I'm not saying that this is a good or bad thing, but it's something to be thinking about, particularly if you work in an industry that is a little more buttoned up. How do you maintain those levels of individuality while wanting to fit in, but also stand out and then also be taken seriously?
Yeah, I do think that it's a constant interrogation, but the answer that I've chosen for myself, and that I find that a lot of people who have found success, is that they like if you think of authenticity as a scale from 1 to 10, right? 1 is when you don't know anybody and you feel really uncomfortable. I probably am in every situation at a 6, and if I feel more comfortable with you, then I get to a 10. But I'm never a 3 or 4. I'm right, like you're gonna get me with red lips, full nails, talking like I'm from Brooklyn because that's where I'm from, and giving you straight talk for straight understanding because that's who I am. The pivoting back and forth for me, really for me, was too heavy. It was too much. It was too much thinking about. But to your point, a lot of people have that question. I would say it's probably the question I get asked the most, particularly when I'm talking to clients at law firms. They're like, well, this place, the uniform is white shirt and button down, blah, 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 and then, but I like to wear this. And the thing is that all cultures shift with the people in them.
Yeah.
May not shift fast, right? And people may look to you sideways and be like, whoa, they're different. But the question is the difference a detriment or is the difference additive, right? And I believe that anytime we come in with our space and our magic, we are adding, but you cannot add and be different and not also live up to the standard of work product and excellence that they right?
Right. It should be like a given. It can't ever be a question of your work. I think what you said about reading the room, and like now I'm thinking about that pendulum, like, so you're a 3, 4. I can't go from 1 to 10. Like you are going to get me at, I'm more like you, but I think reading the room and figuring out, like, I mean, a great example would be like, I'm a big dog person. You will see my dogs often. Some people are not. It's not for them. They think it's not as professional to have, whether dogs, cats, whatever, kids, whatever in the background. That's just not them. There's also people who will show up, wearing a more casual shirt on a Zoom, and other people who even at home feel still to this day that they want to put on like a jacket and a suit. And I would say it's really important to just, read the room, like you said, and then adjust your behavior where you can, but also like if you feel like you do not belong in a certain spot, like it may be, a good idea to find those people and places and things that do make sense. But one of the things you want to make sure is that your individuality and who you are, what you're bringing to the table. And I think this is very important for younger generations, Generation Z and the millennials. They're much more not confident, I would say, but just they are who they are, and they're not making excuses for that. And I think there's going to be a little bit, we have work to do, I think, on that mind shift, because some corporate cultures haven't caught up. Some corporate cultures, Paula, haven't caught up to the idea that it's okay to have a personal brand and also do your work. Like some companies are still not okay with people, speaking and writing and showing up online. And so I hope that continues to go in the direction of the employers being like thinking that someone with a personal brand is a benefit to them and a good thing versus not supporting them.
Well, I think that's going to be the case, even if it's not what they want. What they'll find is there'll be more attrition. Because to your point, I think, all generations of people who are finding and seeing the power of having a bigger and more a stronger brand externally and internally realize that if the place that they are aligned with does not align with that, then they go someplace else, right? So right. And so in order to I just, the thing is, I remember somebody at an event asked me, I don't want to post because then they'll see me and think that time that I was posting,
I'm not working,
that I should have been working. And I'm like, first of all, there are such things as you can set something to post later on. So like that, right? They have no idea when you've done the thing.
They have no idea, or you wrote the post already, you schedule it. They have no idea, nor is it any really, honestly, of any of their business,
Exactly. So the other challenge that I have is when folks don't think that their brand is their own, that they have to only
post about their companies.
Right, exactly. Or have their company own or right. And so there are definitely some places that have social media policies that talk about certain things you can or can't do. But within that, there's still freedom. And I'm a big proponent of not letting somebody else do your stuff unless they are so like your person, like your admin or somebody who is doing on your behalf. You can always tell when it's not you. Like if I know the person, I'm like, oh, that wasn't them. Similar, you mentioned ChatGPT and using AI. One of the things that I am frustrated by, and I'm like, you're probably the only person I can talk about this and like them get it, is when you know that the person just copied and pasted.
Game changer.
They were like,
there's so many telltale signs.
Oh, the words. And again, there's some words that people just use, but if you never use, like, I'm keen. Anytime ChatGPT writes keen, I'm like, keen? No, who says that? And when I said it to a friend the other day, like, I use keen. I was like, well, I've never seen you use the word keen online. So just make sure, and I guess I'm saying this is that you can use, and I think you should use all the tools. And right now, every platform has some kind of AI supplement, but the tools you use should be in like a jumpstart as opposed to a replacement.
Oh, 100%. So, okay, here's my tip on using these tools. So you should never, ever take what any of these AI tools give you as the Bible, the Holy Grail, the final product. Absolutely not. Agreed. It should be a basis. So also I will say the input is so important that will affect the output. So garbage in, garbage out. If you tell it to write a post or summarize my experience doing blah, 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 and you don't give it a lot of, instructions, you're going to get a very generic post. You're going to get something like in a digital first world, and if you see the word game changer, that it was likely written by AI. What I would suggest is you give it the information. Sometimes I even just talk into it. I will say, give notes, and I will say, put this in a human tone that is relatable. Do not use AI phrases. Go through it and make sure that it does not sound like AI. Make it in my voice. The more you use it, the more it knows your voice. Give it examples, and then you will get a better output. But review everything that it gives you. And then I find also the beginning and the end always sounds formulaic from what it gives me. So I make sure that those are things that I have personally vetted and that I have written myself. You can tell a mile away what is AI generated, completely AI generated. You should never be creating content for your personal brand that is from scratch. Like you would never say, create an article about how to build your personal brand when you're busy, a professional. Absolutely not. You're going to give it information, cover these topics, do this, use my past article as an example, copy and paste a transcript from a podcast or from a video that you did, give it context, give it examples. Another thing I sometimes will do is look at my competitor or a peer post and knowing my voice and what I talk about and other things I've written, create a post that is better, different, but on the same themes. And that's something you can do. So I hope that's helpful. But these tools are highly effective, again, for presentations, for outlines, but they should not be the final product.
100%.
Humans are the best at all of these things, and we will never get replaced by this. But remember the personal and personal branding if you are going to use some of these tools. I'm all for tools, Paula, for productivity and to streamline things, to synthesize information, but I am not for them replacing us because we are humans, not robots. And
they really can't. They really can't.
They don't know your experience. They don't know. And that's another thing. Like if you see posts that just sound so like, in order to get ahead in the busy world in your personal brand, you should do this, this, and this. Okay. It's devoid of any personality. You need to have personality. Having a personality and having a voice doesn't mean, again, pulling out those skeletons out of your closet and revealing too many things. It just means being human. This is why also video can be highly compelling for people. Another thing I would say is if you can get somebody, a friend, when you're speaking at a conference, to record you a short little video clip, that's a great thing you can use. And then if you're doing a Zoom, you should record it. And then you can use a tool like Otter, which is, it's sort of like an AI transcription tool. You put the entire transcript into Otter, and then it will give you the transcript in a written form. And then what I like to do with that is take that, Paula, and put it into a chat GPT and say, turn this into, show notes, several blog posts, social media posts, and it gives me the foundation to work with. Sometimes it's easier just to have something instead of a blank piece of paper.
Agreed. Tell me this. What do you think, or what advice do you have for creating like a strategy? Like somebody has a career goal. You talked about some of the things that you can do, but one of the reasons why I love doing the intention and goal setting session at the beginning of the year is because I want people to collectively say, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to impact. You talked all the time, especially to me, about like having content pillars, what do you think if someone has a goal and a vision, how do you create content and a strategy around that?
Okay. So creating a content strategy from scratch is daunting, right? It's like, well, where do we start? What do we do? This is why I've always suggested, I guess, these few things. So I would say pulling all of your LinkedIn posts, downloading them is very helpful to see the things that you have talked about, also to get metrics on what has done well. The exercise about figuring out your content pillars really dovetails nicely with figuring out your personal brand, right? So essentially what you're doing is figuring out the 3 to 5 areas in your wheelhouse that support your brand and business for which you want to be known. And you're not worrying about the tactics in terms of how to communicate that, right? So you're not worrying about, am I sending this out via email? Am I doing a webinar? Is it a video? Is it a podcast? Is it social media post? Not yet. What you're thinking about right now are the 3 to 5 areas. So for example, for me, it would be LinkedIn. It would be personal branding. It would be marketing strategy. Maybe I would pepper in something about like women's empowerment and entrepreneurs. It may change. And again, as you change, this will change. So then I know my areas. I'm not going to deviate for the most part from those. And you know that you're going to see content from me in those areas. Again, this is how you become known in areas. Then you're going to think about, well, how do I spread that message? How do I get that message out? What am I good at? What also am I good at that is going to put me front and center with the people who can hire and refer work to me? Okay, so do I like doing it and will it have impact? And then you should think about these 2 things: owned media versus Earned media. So earned media is me appearing on your podcast. You asked me getting quoted in Law 360, the New York Times, me being asked to speak at an ABA panel. Owned media can also be used from the earned media. So I could write an article, like we said, or key takeaways from that experience. Owned media is when I decide that I'm going to write an article or create a post, and I do it on my time, when I want, how I want it, and I don't worry about getting it published somewhere else. Now, a lot of people still believe that third-party validation from an organization, a publication, whatever it is, will give them gravitas. I think that could be the case with some things, but I also want to make sure that people know that you don't need to wait to get selected and chosen by another organization. I think in this creator economy, some of that credibility has gone by the wayside and is a little bit of an antiquated way of thinking. For some things, it can be helpful. For other things, you don't have to wait 6 weeks, 6 months for someone to take your article, publish it, and maybe even truncate it. You can publish it as you want, when you want, and send it to your email list, which is another thing everybody should have, is an email list, because you don't own your LinkedIn contacts. You don't own the content that's on LinkedIn, which is why I say, read for a rainy day, download all that stuff. You own your email address, right? So you own your email contacts. It's so important. So I would say worry less about the vehicle by which you're going to communicate it, and then figure out what you want to communicate. And then you can try out different things, and then you can repurpose those things. But I think this is like a pretty foolproof way to do this. If 5 seems daunting, do 3, and then set a goal quarterly that you're going to do like 2 to 3 things, like 1 thing a month. If you're going to make the investment in LinkedIn, you need to show up more than once a month. You need to be on LinkedIn regularly, and you need to build a presence there. But all of this can be accomplished, and you're going to then track how you've done, what's worked, what hasn't, because you don't want to create content in a bubble, nor do you want to throw spaghetti at the wall, because guess what happens when you throw spaghetti at the wall?
Yes.
Never anything good.
I love this as a strategy because it can work for entrepreneurs, people who have a business framework within an organization like law firm partners, for people who are looking for a new role or new opportunities. All of that can work within that same framework. It's what you want to be visible for and how you make that happen.
And we do that we can change any day. You decide you want to be an entrepreneur. You know what? You then start writing about different topics. What do you want the side business to be? You have a choice and you have control. And I think a lot of us forget that. We're like, okay, well, I do this job at this big organization, so I could never move into X role. No, absolutely not. You just need to figure out how to position your experience and position yourself and figure out where do you want to grow and go.
I love that. Okay. Is there one new habit that you think that professionals should adopt this year to elevate their brand consistently?
I think stepping outside of your comfort zone a little bit would be something I would recommend for everybody. And this is something you can do, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. I'm working with a client who is in his late 60s, who's never used LinkedIn and wants to use it, not for himself as much as to help his firm and the people who are next generation coming up as he thinks about retirement. So think about one thing you can do that will be something that maybe be a little bit inconvenient, but will be good in the long run. I would also say make an effort to build relationships, because as you and I both say, your network is your net worth. Relationships are part of personal branding. Your relationships, you will only be as successful in business and in anything in your life as I guess the quality of your success is going to be directly correlated to the quality of your relationships, right? So the better our relationships personally and professionally, the better our opportunities will be. And that's just how life is. Because again, showing up, being a human, all of those things, like helping other people, it really does make a difference, and it makes people like us more. It makes people want to work with us more. And this is, again, why there's a lot of people who do what you and I do, and you want to stand out. And how do you stand out? Well, it's not just providing content and value. It's also about helping people. It's about remembering their birthdays. It's about, lending a hand when they need one, sending them an article. It's all of those things. Those all filter and factor into your personal brand.
I love it. And that is a perfect way for us to end our conversation. Stefanie, tell everybody how they can stay in touch with you and find out more about you, your work, and the things that you do for others.
So you can find my blog, the social media butterflyblog.com, and that has lots of social media, personal branding, marketing advice. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just type in my name, follow me, click the bell on my profile to receive an update when I post something. And you can follow me also on Threads. I am there, and also Instagram.
Awesome. Everybody tell a friend that they need to hear this episode to get themselves together for the new year and anytime they listen to this one, no matter what time of year it is. These are all actionable strategies in order to build their brand and to connect with people better. Stefanie, my friend, I'm glad that we are in relationship with each other so that I can tell everybody how fantastic you are and they can do all the things that you said to kill it in their personal brands. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.